Is joining in and watching this live. I'm doing a TikTok live on people pleasing. And then for everybody who's watching this on YouTube later, I'm doing a live about people pleasing. So who I'm talking to is the people in the comments. All right, good morning. Hello, good morning. So does anybody have any experience with people pleasing? I am a recovering people pleaser. That's something that I'm always working and growing through. And so we're going to talk about like what that is, my experience with that, because I found that when I share my experience with things, it's very universal and a lot of other people have experienced that. Sometimes it's good to hear other people's stories because, oh, Daisy, yes, okay. Sometimes it's good to hear other people's stories because then you don't feel alone. And that there's other people out there experiencing that. Because when I found out what people pleasing was, I was like shocked. Like I didn't know that it was a like reoccurring theme with people. And so that's why, you know, we find people that are experiencing the same thing and it validates what's going on in our reality. And we're like, oh, we're not alone. There's all these other people. Okay. And it's a great way to find support by finding people like that. So we're going to talk about it. Okay, so and if anybody has any questions or comments, like as I'm going along, I'll answer them. So feel free to chime in. This is interactive. Okay, so let me put some of this in my hands. So people pleasing is when you are taking personal responsibility for somebody else's happiness. There's different versions of people pleasing, so I'm going to talk about a couple different ones. And I find this a lot with empaths and light workers, if you are one, is that because we feel other people's feelings, thoughts, and emotions, and we're very hyper susceptible to how people are feeling in their moods, oftentimes what we'll do is we'll pick up on their vibe and we'll be like, oh, this person is unhappy, this person is feeling sad, this person is feeling grief, right? And then we think, oh, like, I know how to make them happier. Like, I can do that. Like, I can raise your frequency up and make you feel really good, right? And it's my personal responsibility because maybe I'm the only one in the room that knows that you're sad or knows that you're angry or knows that you're frustrated. And I have the ability to help you feel better, right? And so that's great. And that's a beautiful thing to help other people. Like, that's the sweetest, right? But if you are an empath or light worker who is not holding good boundaries and shielding and knows how to navigate not taking on other people's stuff, right? What happens is, let's say that you and I are having a conversation and I know that you're upset and then I'm talking to you. As an empath and light worker, I'm better about it now because I do boundary shielding and clearing, but I see this a lot with other people and sometimes me too, right? So I will take on your emotions so I know how you're feeling. Like, we as empath and light workers literally take that person's frequency and put it in our body so that we can speak to them from that level of understanding. And so if you're constantly taking on other people's frequencies and their emotions, your body doesn't know the difference if you're not doing boundary shielding and clearing. Like, your central nervous system is like, wow, now we're angry. Now we're depressed. Now we're sad. Now, and sometimes it's good things. Sometimes, like, somebody's like, you're around somebody that's like super, super excited and they're like, ah, right? Like, that's cool. Like, to be in that excited state, right? But even if we're having like a super chill day, and then so if we're having like a super chill day and then we're around somebody that's like super frantically excited, that can affect our central nervous system. And like, that's a good thing to be happy and excited. But if you're not on that level and now all of a sudden you are, it's gonna be a big crash afterwards. And so sometimes, like I said, we take it as our personal responsibility to make that person happy or change their mood, right? And so with that, that's a trauma response sometimes. Like, I experienced a lot of trauma as a child. Yes. I experienced a lot of trauma as a child. And I had very, very overbearing parents from a religious household. And I grew up where, you know, females weren't exactly celebrated. But at the same time, I was pushed to be the best possible like version of myself constantly, but at the same time being oppressed and suppressed. And my grandparents would have wild mood swings, right? And when you're in that state, what you do is you try and fix the situation. And I know there's probably a lot of people in here that have experienced the same thing, where they had very chaotic energy type of parents. And so you would take it on as your responsibility to make them feel better, or to try and even kill out the vibrations in the room. Like, that's why we do that now as adults. We're in a room full of people and we see that somebody's hurting, or we see that somebody's trying to disrupt the vibrations in the room of being angry or being very sad, and then we automatically go to that person and try and help them. Okay, so empaths and light workers, I found this too, is that when we're out in public, it's a trauma response because we've had to keep ourselves safe by mitigating the energies in the room. Hold on one second. So we have had to keep ourselves safe by knowing what's like, let me give you an example. So we're in, let's say, CVS, okay? And there are 20 people in the room, in the store, okay? We aren't attuned, if you've experienced trauma and are empath, we're not attuned to find happy people in the room. We are attuned to find the people that are hurting and that could be a potential threat. And so we pick up on the frequencies of the people who are causing disruptions, because it's like, oh, that person might be a threat to me. And so oftentimes you feel very anxious and depressed and sad when you're an empath and a light worker, if you're not doing boundary shielding and clearing, because you are picking up on who in here is hurting right now. And we like to help people too, right? And so that is why people come up to us and tell us their life story, because then we help them raise their frequencies. Like we have the innate ability to help people feel better because we've been through those things ourselves, and we naturally want to comfort others, right? One moment. Okay. So we naturally want to help other people. And so we naturally pick up on those frequencies. I went way off into empaths and light workers. I'm going to talk more about people pleasing, but it comes together, okay? So that's a trauma response of wanting to help everyone all the time. And like, that's a beautiful thing that you want to help people. And okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting too caught up in the chat. I gotta stop looking at the chat. Okay. So it's a beautiful thing that you want to help people. Like, I love helping people. Like, I know that's why I came here, why I soul contracted to do this incarnation, right? Like, that's one of my favorite things is helping people. But source in the universe is not going to ask you to help people at a detriment of self. Like, it's just not going to ask you to do those things. So we can get into like equal energy exchanges. Let me fix my curtain here because there's like a glare. So hold on one second. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so all right, yeah, I'm gonna stop looking at the chat because it's getting me caught up with people. This is a perfect example too. We'll talk about what's going on in the chat right now. Okay, so there's disruption in the chat right now about how people feel about the way that I'm saying things and what I'm saying, and that's fine. That's totally okay. In the past, I would have let that get to me and say like, oh, and tried to explain myself, right? People, you're not always people's cup of tea. You're not always on the same wavelength as people. You're not always on the same frequency as people. That person's truth, or those people's truth, or whoever people's truth out in the world, that's their truth. What I'm saying might be wrong for them. But I know there's a bunch of people in here right now that know exactly what I'm saying, and we're on the same wavelength. And you've experienced the same things that I'm talking about. And so, like, that's okay. But that's where people pleasing comes in too. Like, in the past, I would have been like, oh, well, you know, all these people think about all these things about me. Like, okay. There's a whole sect of people that are going to say I'm wrong, and there's a whole sect of people that are going to say I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm not for these people. I'm for these people. And some people say, like, well, you're spreading misinformation, right? And you need to use discernment. Okay, people need to use discernment. If something feels good in your body, thank you for saying you like my shirt. If something feels good in your body, that is your soul saying this is true for us. If something makes you feel constricted and like, oh, I don't know about that, that's your soul saying that's not our truth, and that's totally okay. Right? But the people that I am for, like, I'm very mindful of the things that I say. I have been to psychology. I went to school for psychology. I do so much research all the time. And I make sure that what I'm saying is going to be beneficial. When I'm saying, like, hey, people pleasing is an unhealthy behavior, that's universal. And sharing my experience like that, not everybody lives that experience, right? But I know there are a lot of people that do. And so this is a perfect example of how you can let people pleasing either get to you, or you can say, I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and not everybody's going to understand me, and that's totally okay. I am actually an Aquarius. And that probably has a lot to do with it. Because I'm very, like, a rebellious type of person. Okay, well, I'm glad it's resonating with some people. And like I said, use your discernment, right? If it doesn't feel like this is for you, you don't, or some pieces, that's the thing too. Like, when you're listening to other people, like, you don't have to take everything they're saying for truth. You take what resonates with you. Like, everything I say might not be for you, or might not be resonant for you, and some pieces of it might. Like, don't ever just take whatever somebody is saying. It's true, right? This is just my experience and what I have learned over my years, okay? So, trauma response and wanting to be liked. Like, people pleasing is, I want everyone to like me. That was a huge thing for me. I had so much trauma around abandonment as a child from my parents. How about oversharing? Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, it just depends. Like, oversharing, like, vulnerability is a strength to me. And that's something that I thought was a weakness for a long time, like telling people, like, hey, this is what I struggled with, right? That's what people need to hear and learn from. Like, hearing other people's stories. That's how I healed, is like listening to other people. If you're oversharing in a way that, oh, that'll get me off topic. We can have a side conversation about that if you want. Okay, so I had this intense fear of being alone. Like, a very intense fear. Because, oh no, you're okay, don't apologize. I just don't want to get too off track, because that's like a whole nother thing I could go on. But I might do a live about vulnerability. Okay, so I was abandoned by my biological parents. Like, my mom was just like in and out of my life constantly, and then I never met my dad, and then my grandparents adopted me, and that was great, and I love them so much for that, and it completely changed my life. But even then, they weren't like the most connected in. Right? And so, hold on. Okay, I gotta stop looking at the chat. Anyway, okay, so they weren't the most connected in. And what was happening was I was reaching outside of myself for validation all the time, because I was so afraid of being alone. I also had a lot of anxiety and depression, and I had an eating disorder. Like, just everything was just really intense for a really long time, right? And so I would try and find people to fill that void space. And so what ended up happening was I would find friends that weren't in resonance with me and weren't on that same wavelength and frequency, because I had built a mask of people pleasing around me. Like, I had built this whole persona of someone who wasn't really me. And so I thought what I was doing by people pleasing and saying, like, you know, I'll do anything to have friends, I'll do anything to feel loved, was actually making me lonelier. because it was like all the relationships that I had never fulfilled that. All the romantic relationships, all of the friendships, I kept on saying, like, why doesn't anybody get me? Like, I love people so much, and I go so far in depth with people and like try and like figure out what's going on in their life and like really learn about them on like on a soul level. But nobody is returning that back to me. Yeah, it was just very lonely. It wasn't their fault though. What was happening was I was showing them a version of myself that wasn't really me. And so they were trying to connect with somebody that it was a fake persona. And so I was just feeling lonely. I just never felt like I connected in with anyone, right? And so, great truth, been down that road before also. Yeah, it's just really lonely, right? And so what I found to help me with that is it just took time. It really took time. It took me building confidence and self-esteem and learning that, well, something else happened. So I had my spiritual awakening, and then I said to the universe, I said, I don't like what's going on in my reality. Like everything. I don't like anything. I don't like my job. I don't like my friends. I'm not resonating with my family. I don't like any of the stuff that's around me right now. Right? And I was sitting on the bathroom floor and I was crying my eyes out. And I said, I don't care what it takes, universe. I want a different life. I don't care. Do whatever you have to do, because right now I'm so miserable. I literally don't care what happens. Yep, boom, tower moment. It was so intense. It was so intense. I quit my job. I lost every single one of my friends, my family, like completely, like cut, like everything completely made this huge exodus out of my life. Like huge exodus. And I was alone for a year. And it was one of the hardest years of my life. Because I had to completely live inside of my biggest fear. And I know now on the other side of it, because I'm source, you're source, like we're all source. Like when I was talking to source, I was actually talking to myself. Like if you believe that like the universe is experiencing itself through us, right? Like I'm source experiencing the Brittany Porter's lenses. Okay. I was really talking to me on the bathroom floor. And so I changed my vibration and frequency that day. I didn't know what I was asking for, and I didn't know what I was doing at the time, and that's why I like to share this, because I know that there's a lot of people going through that right now, like the dark night of the soul, and that it can be really intense and really scary. And now on the other side of it, I can look back and say like, oh yeah, that had to happen. Like I had to completely be isolated from everyone and everything so that I could figure out who I am. Because I had built so many personas and had been masking for so long that I had forgotten who I am. I was like, what do I like to do outside of other people? Right? Oh, good. I'm glad it's resonating. Okay, that's what I was saying. Like, people who don't resonate with, they'll pop out. And then the people that it is, they'll stay in, okay? So I had to completely be isolated. And in that isolation, I learned to sit with my thoughts. I used to hate myself. Like, I'll just be very, transparent. I used to hate myself. I used to say, like, you're no good, you're unworthy, like, look at your life, it's shit, right? And from the outside perspective, I had a really good life. Like, I had a really good life. Like, I had built myself a good life, but it was a fake life. It was a people-pleasing life. It was a, you should do this. Okay, yeah, I'll do that. It was a life that I hadn't built for me. It was a life that I had built from the shoulds of other people, because I was feeling so afraid of being lonely and that I would never make the right decision, so I let other people make decisions for me. And so when I had that big, rocky spiritual awakening, it was like, that's not going to work anymore. Like, if you want the life that you want, you got to let go of all that stuff. And when I was in that dark, night of the soul, That was hard because it meant that I had to let go of everything that I knew, all of my self-limiting beliefs. And, you know, change is scary. Like, even when you know it's going to be positive on the other side, our subconscious and our ego gets like so latched on to certain realities, and it will do everything it can in its nature to hold on to those things, right? And it's like, I'll give you an example, okay? When I heard this, it was really, you get comfortable in the chaos. Yeah, eventually you're just like, you're just like, it's a Dark Knight of the Soul Tower moment, it's fine. So when you have a dying animal, that animal will do anything in its power to stay alive, right? And so your ego is kind of like that too. Like, we need our ego. Like, our ego is there to keep us safe. But in safety, it wants to keep you in comfortability, because comfortability means safety, even if it's at your detriment. And so you have to go against your ego sometimes. You have to say, no, we're not going to do that anymore because it's not serving us. And when you do that, stuff starts, your ego will battle against you tooth and nail. Okay, I had that happen to me the other day. Like, I have some very deep programming beliefs about abundance and prosperity, because I grew up in a very religious household and was told money is the root of all evil. You'll go to hell. Like, if you're rich, that means that you're a bad person. Like, I have come miles away from that, and I'm doing much better about it now. But I had a chat with my higher self the other day, and she was like, hey, we still got some stuff going on here. Let's have a chat about it. And we talked about, you know, like, subconscious work. I went and took a nap afterwards, and I had one of the scariest nightmares about abundance and prosperity. Like, very scary, very visceral, very, like, real. Like, I felt like I was there, right? Looking back at it, I know that what happened was, and if you don't believe this, that's fine, okay? You're not, like, woo esoteric. I know that during that dream that I popped over into a different, like, concurrently running timeline about, this is what your life could look like, right? And I realized when I woke up, it took me like a couple hours to process it, but I realized that it was my ego trying to keep me in a chokehold. Because it's like, you're wanting to do all these new things in your life, but what if you fail? This is what your life will look like, right? But that's not true, right? Maybe that's true for somebody else or some other timeline. That's not my destiny. I have started saying that. If that helps anybody too, that's not my destiny. When people tell you should do this, this could happen, that could happen, that's not my destiny. I know what my destiny is. I know my destiny is greatness. It is already great, and it's going to continue to be great. Whatever somebody's trying to tell you, that's not my destiny. Okay? What's the best that could happen? Yeah, that's great. Like, this morning I woke up and I said, universe, show me how abundant today can get. Show me how magical. Show me how whimsical. Show me how prosperous today can be. I've also started doing something that has really, like, changed my last couple days. Just I'll throw that out there. Is before I go to bed, I say, I am intending to wake up on my best, most positive, most abundant timeline. And when I wake up in the morning, I say, I am on my best, most abundant, most prosperous timeline. And I have been having the best days, like the absolute best days, the last couple days, except for that nightmare thing. But see, that's another thing. You can take that perspective of like, oh, I had that nightmare and like all these things. No, that was great because I knew that my ego was being put in check. Like, if my ego is fighting me against something like that and saying like, this could be you, right? Then I know I'm about to make a giant shift because my ego is fighting tooth and nail to keep me where I'm at. And that means that that ego is about to be put in check, right? And so that's, sometimes you gotta do those like little perspective shifts and say like, why is this happening to me? And changing that, why is that happening for me? Because I could have gone down the rabbit hole of like, you know what, maybe that's right. Maybe I should be afraid. Maybe I should be scared because that could be my life. No, that's not my destiny. and it's myself. It's up here, right? Like, it's me talking to me. It's me battling my ego. And your ego is, and people are like, oh, you need to kill your ego and all this stuff. Your ego is there to help you. It just wants to keep you safe. It's not good. It's not bad. It's neutral. It's trying to keep you safe. Like, they're berating your ego is just really berating yourself at the end of the day, because it's a piece of you. It's part of you. Like, it's literally just a safety measure. Right? But you don't have to. It's just like a friend, okay? Like, a friend gives you advice. Does that always mean that you have to follow it? If it's bad advice? No. What would happen if I followed that advice my ego gave me? Like, hey, oh, you shouldn't be trying to make all these shifts because it could crumble out underneath you and then you look like a fool and now blah, 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 right? Okay, but what if that doesn't happen? Right? Like, that was not good advice. It's solid advice because, like, that friend is trying to help me, but that's not my destiny. Like, thank you for your concerns, but we're not going down that rabbit hole. Okay, exactly. Just like its emotions, they're simply guides and it's signals. Yeah, it was just like, hey, I just want to keep you safe. And I'm like, thanks, but not my destiny. Okay, so like, I went way off on this huge tangent, but anyway, but maybe that helps somebody. Sometimes that happens, like, spirit just kind of steers us elsewhere. Okay, so I had made this, like, life outside of me, and then I was like, I don't want this anymore, and then it started crumbling and collapsing, and now I'm on my journey of being alone for a year with nobody around me, nothing, nobody. Okay, it was so hard, and it was so depressing, and it was so sad. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you and say, like, dark nights of the soul are like easy peasy lemon squeezy. Okay, like, they're intense, but they don't last forever. And I think some people get, like, so deep down in their tower moments and their dark nights of the soul that they forget that it doesn't last forever. And what's on the other side of that is so beautiful. It's you recalibrating to your new consciousness. It's you recalibrating to who you are more at a soul core level. And the people that come into your life, way different. Because now you know who you are at a deeper level and what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept. So, like, I lost every single friend and stopped talking to all my family and stopped talking to everybody. But what that led to is me having stronger boundaries, me knowing, like, what I want to do, what I like, what I don't like. And then when I started coming out of that hermit phase, I started finding people that were in alignment with me. And when you move to a new consciousness form like that, the universe will bring you people and experiences that still aren't in alignment with you exactly. Part of manifesting is saying no. Like, that's a big lesson that I have learned, is that sometimes the universe, which is you, okay, is you doing these things to yourself. I just, like, not everything. Like, I don't want to say, like, very traumatic things that have happened to you, but just bear with me for this example, okay? So I started getting things that weren't quite in alignment, and the universe, me, was like, what are you going to do here? Are you going to be friends with this person? Are you going to take this job? Are you going to do this that you have done before but in a different flavor? And sometimes I did. Sometimes I went towards something that I knew wasn't quite in alignment with me, but I did it anyway. And it just takes practice. And to take practice, it takes action. Like, you have to have things come into your vibration and frequency to practice on, right? And so every time I did that, though, it never worked out. Never worked out. But when I did find somebody that I was like, you are in 100% soul alignment with me, whether it's a job, a relationship, a friend, or whatever, that always worked out. Always. And it was completely different than the friends that I had before. And like I said, it wasn't those friends' fault that we, weren't vibing like that. It was mine, because I was showing them a fake persona and a fake me. Because I was so afraid of what other people would think of me, the true me, right? Which caused more loneliness and more anxiety and more depression. And I had to go through that moment of being away from everyone and everything to fall in love with myself. Because if you don't fall in love with yourself and love yourself at a deep core level, what kind of people do you think that you're pulling in? You're pulling in other people that don't love themselves wholly and completely. And now you're in this whole like group of people, family members, jobs, all this stuff that are resonating on the same frequency as you are. That's why I like talking about energy and frequency, because that's literally how it works. Whatever's going on inside of you internally is what you're pulling in around you. And like, I have lived and breathed that. Like, and I'm not saying my life is like perfect. I still have things that I'm learning and growing through, right? And so I don't want anybody to take this as like, oh, well, you know, it'll be all peachy one day and like everything's fine. But for the most part, I'm like, my life is so much different than it was like 15 years ago. So much different. But the reason it's different is because I had to do all of that internal work to change everything externally. When you really start to deep dive inside and fall in love with yourself and work on your self-confidence and your self-esteem and stop people pleasing and start doing the things that you want to do for you and following your heart's desires, every single thing around you changes. You may have the same people in your life. Like, I have people that are in my life that have rocked with me the whole time. Like, I took that hiatus, and then when I came back up out of hermit mode, some of those people were still in my life, like especially like some family people. They were different though, because I was different. I was reacting and responding differently to them. Like, people will treat you however you let them treat you. And I know that's a little more difficult with like family members and stuff, because like the dynamics there. But even so, like, people will treat you however you let them treat you. And so that was a big waking up moment for me. I did this. All these people that were using me as a doormat, I let them do that because I wanted them to like me so badly. I was so afraid of what other people thought about me and like how they treat me, right? There was like an eye-opening moment where it was just like, I can't do that anymore. Like, I burnt myself out so bad and I was so lonely that I was like, what is it going to hurt if I be my authentic self? Like, if I do all the things that I want to do and be authentically me, and if people resonate with me and they like my frequency and they stay with me, great. If they don't, I don't want those people in my life anyway. I literally don't want people, and to this day, like, if we're not on the same wavelength and frequency, I don't want you in my life. And that's nothing against them, and it's nothing against me. Like, literally has nothing to do with that person. But I'm not good for that person. Like, if we're not vibing like that, I'm a detriment to you too. Like, there are so many people on the planet. Like, so many souls on the planet. You don't have to settle for something that's not good for you. And I know that we get tripped up sometimes and we say, well, I don't have any friends, and so I have to keep these friends. No, you don't. No, you don't. Because it's hurting you. Keeping fake relationships around you is so detrimental. And it's keeping the universe from being able to bring you the people that you are in resonance with. And you may have to go through that lonely phase. You literally may have to go through that phase where you are not with anybody to find yourself. And when you find yourself, that is when people come in that are in resonance with you. If you don't want to hurt others, and I get that. Like, that's been something that I've been working through too. Like, all this time is like, well, I don't want to hurt somebody, right? You don't have to necessarily like come out the bat and say like, you're exiting my life. Okay? Because it's a real person that you're dealing with. Like, you don't want to just like hurt their feelings. But there are ways that you can mitigate how much time and energy you're spending with people. Equal energy exchanges, okay? If you have negative in watching junk TV, I had to pull away from all that. Yeah, I'll talk about that a second too. Okay, so yeah, boundaries is great too. So if you have people that are around you in your reality, and when you spend time with them, it makes you feel yucky, and it makes you feel worse. Like if they're very drama filled, or if they're always complaining. Now you have to ask yourself too, am I doing that? Am I doing that? Because if you're doing that, you pulled those people in. You pulled those people into your life. And I know that I'm not trying to like say like you did something wrong. It's just you're resonating on that frequency. And so you pulled that in. Yeah, you got to ask yourself, because I used to be so drama filled. Like I used to love drama and like tea and talking shit about people and like just like on some hot girl mess, okay? And that's what I built around me. I built around a reality around me that was reflecting my internal state. And so when I had my big like spiritual awakening, it was very eye-opening, and I took a big ego hit, because it was like, you did this. You brought all these people and these experiences into your life. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna stay in this? Like you have a choice. Are you gonna continue to do this? But now my eyes are open and I see what I did. And so when I had all those people right around me, I had to say, you know what? This relationship isn't the best for me. I need to adjust how much time and energy that I'm spending with this person. When you adjust how you're reacting and responding to people, they start reacting and responding differently to you. They either meet your frequency or they fall away. There's no reason that you have to be like you need to be out of my life. And sometimes you do. Sometimes very toxic people you don't need to have in your life at all. But if it's somebody that you've been friends with for a long time, you have to respond and react differently. So like, let's take me. So if I'm having a conversation with a friend and we're used to doing drama and tea, right? And we're saying like, this girl's a piece of whatever, right? In that moment, I have to say, well, you know, she's probably dealing with stuff on her own in like her own life, and come at it from a different response. When you butt up against people with a new way of being, sometimes they get angry or they think that you're mad at them, and they push against that. And they're like, who are you? Why are you acting like this? This isn't you, right? Then they have the choice of whether they move to the new frequency with you or they stay in that frequency. You've changed. Yes. I have heard that many times. And that's good, because we're meant to grow. We're meant to change. We're meant to evolve. We're not meant to stay the same, right? And so they have the choice then, do I stay with them and move with them on that growth train, on that frequency shift? Or am I going to stay in my frequency? It's not your responsibility to take them with you. It's their choice. You can't drag anybody. You literally can't. It's their own choice. You have to change what's going on in here, and the things around you will change. And that's really scary sometimes. Like, people don't want to change, and that was me too, because I was like, if I change, that means that all of my friends and all of my jobs and everything are going to leave. And even though they weren't good for me, it was like, well, what does it look like on the other side? And it's scary taking those leaps of faith, because it's like, I don't know what it's going to look like. Who's going to be there? Who's going to be my friend on the other side? What job am I going to have? Right? But if you're at that same point that I was at, where you hate everything around you and you hate yourself, how much worse can it get? Like, I'll just be very blunt and very honest. Like, if you're at rock bottom right now, how much worse could it get? Like, and that's literally the decision that I had to make. I have to let go of everything and everyone, and it's just everything. And I'm not saying, please don't take this as me saying to quit your job. That's what I did. It was very rocky. Okay? There are some better ways that I probably could have mitigated my dark night of the soul. Like, I'm not saying to just cut out all your friends. I'm not saying to cut out your job. I'm not saying to do that. When I look back, if I was talking to younger version of me, you did the same. Yeah, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you just got to make a huge exodus, okay? If I was talking to younger me, like 10 years ago, I would have said, hey, we don't have to make drastic moves like that. Okay? We can start working on internal and slowly do that way. Like, we don't have to make a huge exodus, okay? Because I think sometimes in spirituality, people are like, you gotta drop everything. Okay, you can do that, but it's gonna be rocky. Okay. And sometimes not. Like, it just depends. Like, that's what I'm saying. Use your discernment and what's best for you. But you can do this slowly, right? And change who you are over time. And start building. Like, when you do things like that, it solidifies in your paradigm, like, okay, I had this little win, I can do a bigger one. I had this little win, I can do a bigger one. I have this little win, I can do a bigger one. I'm working on my authenticity. I'm working on standing in my truth and my power and, like, holding boundaries with people. Like, you can do it incrementally. Okay. So, and I have learned that too. Like, we don't have to make these huge, giant, like, timeline shifts. Like, we can micro shift and it's a lot smoother. Okay. Okay. So with that, I have some notes here. Okay, so some things. Before I finish up, I'll be on here for like 10 more minutes and then I gotta go. So some things that have helped me. Okay, so asking yourself who I am and what do I want. When I was going through this dark night of the soul and then I asked myself that, I was like, I don't know who I am. I have no idea. Literally no clue. What do I like? I don't know. Like, I literally had no hobbies or anything or passions or interests because I had, like, over invested myself into everyone else and everything. And so it was like, what do I enjoy around other people? Right? And so that's why I had to be alone to figure out what it is that I do like, right? And so ask yourself, who am I? What do I like? What do I enjoy? And if your answer is, I don't know, that's your indicator that you're people pleasing. That you're doing things for other people. That you're not doing things for self. Because you probably have your reality wrapped up in parents, people, romantic relationships, kids. Not saying you shouldn't be involved with things like that, but it's like, who are you if you didn't have any of those things? Like, if you didn't have kids, if you didn't have a romantic partner, if you didn't have parents to take care of, if you weren't going to school, who are you? And if you can't answer that, and we're always asking ourselves that question. I want to also stipulate that that's a running question. Okay. That's a running question. Like, I ask myself that a lot, and it changes. It changes a lot. Right? And so I don't want you to think that one day you're going to wake up, and maybe you do. Maybe you wake up one day and you're saying, I know exactly who I am, but we evolve. And so it's a good check-in question, right? To make sure that you're in soul alignment. Or, like, what do I enjoy? Because that changes too. Like, I used to do things before that brought me a lot of joy that I try and do now. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't exactly, like, resonate with me anymore. And it makes me sad sometimes. Because I'm like, I used to love it. And when I talk to the past versions of me, they're like, dang, we really like this. And I'm like, yeah, that's not really who we are now, though. Right? Okay. So the next one is going against the grain. Okay. So you have to do things to push boundaries to have growth. Like, and I'll give you an example. So I had blonde hair. Like, I was very, like, Barbie-esque, if that makes sense. Like, I was super tan, had bright blonde hair, like, dressed differently than I do now, but it wasn't in resonance with me. Like, I was doing that because that's what society said that I wasn't beautiful if I didn't do that, or I wouldn't be loved and accepted. And so I was like, I'm gonna dye my hair. I'm gonna dye it like this bright ass pink color. It was much brighter than what I have right now. And that was a real struggle for me. like a real struggle. Also because I live in the South, and nothing against the South. I love the South, but where I live is very conservative. And that's like wild for somebody to dye their hair that color. And so I dyed my hair, and I got all these looks. Like, I got all these looks all the time, and people are like, why would you do that? What are you doing? Like, you're 30 years old. Like, well, I guess I wasn't 30 then, but they're like, well, you're too old to do that. Like, you're never going to get a job like that, right? And so that was a huge lesson to me, and I had to do it to grow. So I dyed my hair, and you know what happened? I started having and I said, I don't care. I don't care. I feel like people look at me all the time. I'm going to do something so I know that they're looking at me. Like, oh, you're staring at me? I know it's because you're looking at my hair. And that helped me with my social anxiety. And then I started having kids come up to me, and they're like, oh my God, I love your hair. And I was like, you know what? I'm a really good example to kids that you can do what you want to do as an adult. And you can still have fun and be whimsical and be magical and look like a fairy, right? And then I started having interesting conversations with older people. And they started saying, like, why would you do that? And instead of me getting angry and saying, like, it's none of your business, I would say, oh, it's helping me with my self-confidence and self-esteem. And they would say, well, how is that? And then I would explain it to them, and they'd be like, oh, wow. Like, I never thought about it like that before. And I was like, when people see my hair, it makes them really happy. Like, it puts a smile on their face. Like, it makes me happy seeing people smile. And then they would be like, oh, wow, I didn't think about it like that, right? And then I started having interesting conversations with people because of it. And, like, it became this beautiful thing. Like, it still is to this day. But I would have not experienced the good side of that if I hadn't gone against the grain and put myself through a situation where people, like, talk shit. And I, like, said, I don't care. Let them. Because on the other side of that, there's also people that will love and appreciate it. And it wasn't even about the other people. It was about me accepting myself and saying, I don't care. Like, when I started making social media content, I put some stuff on Reddit, and I got dragged. Like, dragged for the things that I was saying. And it really took me down, and I got in a really depressive hole. And I was like, well, maybe what I'm doing is not right. Maybe what I'm saying is not right. And my higher self was like, what are we going to do here? Are you going to let this take you down, or are you going to push through? And I said, you know what? I'm going to push through. I'm not going to let this take me down. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep growing. I'm going to keep doing it. And then I just said, I don't care. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and not everybody's going to understand me. And that's totally okay, because they're on their own life. They're on their own journey. And when I did that, it gave me a huge boost of confidence. And then I found my people. And then my content started growing. And then I started getting more business. And then everything just started rolling and moving. But I had to put myself in a situation to experience growth. And sometimes you have to do that. People will always talk whether you do something good or bad. Exactly. I have, even to this day, I post content and people will be like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. And then I'll have other people that say, like, I watched your content and it has changed my life. And I've seen that happen, like where I've done one-on-one client sessions with people, or I have posted some content and then they tell me what happens afterwards, and they're like, my life is completely different because of you. And that same content, somebody says, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And it's like, which wolf are we going to feed? That's a good story. So there's a story, I think it's a Native American story, where it's like you have two wolves inside of you. One is the good wolf, one is the bad wolf, right? And it's like the one you feed is the one that gets stronger. So I could have let those negative comments like eat me up inside, or I can look at the people that it's like changing their life and saying, you know what? I'm not everybody's vibe. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that is totally okay. I don't want people around me that aren't in resonance with me. I do not want them around me. And there's nothing wrong with those people. It's like, I want to vibe with people who I vibe with. And if you don't, that's okay. Like, I wish you well on your journey. Right? Like, I do not have time or energy anymore for things that don't make me happy. And I'm not saying my life is happy 24/7, because, you know, life is life and there's challenging things that happen. But it's a lot happier than it was before, because I don't keep things or people around me that don't make me happy, or experiences. So something else, and I got like 5 more minutes. So something else are watching self-confidence and self-esteem videos. Your subconscious, like if you have things that have been going on since childhood, that root from childhood, if you want to change things in your life, a lot of times you have to work with your subconscious, because that's where like very deep rooted programming was put in. Like, so deep rooted programming. So you have to bypass your conscious adult mind and get to the root of stuff to change stuff in the present now. 1 second. So I went to school for psychology, and that's where I picked up all this subconscious stuff, right? And through spirituality. So I watched hundreds of videos, and I still do to this day, about self-confidence and self-esteem. When you start to listen to the same content over and over and over and over again in different perspectives and different flavors, your subconscious starts to believe it. What you put into your subconscious becomes your outer reality. And that was me. I used to watch drama shows all the time, like drama shows. I love drama, Jersey Shore, like, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying not to do that, but that's a ton of content that I was consuming. What do you think my relationships were in my outer reality? Because my subconscious was like, oh, you like that? I'll bring you more of that. And that works with positive things too. If you fill your content up with the things that you're consuming with who you want to be or the things that you want to embody, you'll become that. Like, literally will become that. Watch self-confidence and self-esteem videos on YouTube and podcasts and as much content as you can consume, and you will become that. I used to, when I was experiencing anxiety and depression, I used to watch content creators that were also anxious and depressed, and it was very validating for my experience. I was like, oh, I'm not the only one, and that's great, that's beautiful, right? But that's the only thing I was consuming. So it was keeping me in that vibration and that frequency of like anxiety and depression, watching other people who were talking about being anxious and depressed. And it was good at the beginning because it was like, oh, it's validating my experience. Other people are like this. But it wasn't helping me. It wasn't helping me grow. And so I had to find content that would help me get out of that vibration and that frequency. I had to stop, like even now when I'm on TikTok and I'm scrolling, watching things, if I hear somebody that's talking about lack mentality and like I'm broke and I'm poor, because I have very deep rooted programming in my life for things like that, I skip it. I will not watch it. I will not watch that, because that's solidifying in my subconscious that that's my reality. What I will watch is something that helps me with my finances, that helps me grow. What can I do? I need to watch some content. How can I be more prosperous and abundant? How can I work with my finances? How can I change my mindset? If I'm sitting there watching lack mentality videos, that's what the program that's going to be running. And I'll see that in my outer reality. And so I'm not saying to never watch drama and whatever, right? Like, that's fine. Like, we're human beings. But what you're consuming is what you will get more of, because it's programming you in your subconscious. Okay, the next thing is shadow work. Like, these things in our lives are coming from somewhere. Like, a lot of times when I was going through like self-confidence and self-esteem, I thought it was very topical. Like, I didn't understand at the time that it was things that happened in childhood that skewed my perception of self and life. And it wasn't until I started working backwards and really asking myself those really deep questions of like, why do I feel this way? Like, why do I struggle with self-confidence and self-esteem, instead of trying to bypass it and push it under the rug and not look at it? And so a great way to do this is keep asking yourself why. Like if you really want to get to the root of something, keep asking yourself why. Why do I feel this way? 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 The more times you ask yourself that and keep going back, you'll find the root. Like you will find it. But you got to keep asking yourself, why do I feel this way? And I want to stipulate too, like shadow work can become very toxic. Like if you're trying to constantly dig at things and heal things, like we're not meant to be doing shadow work all the time. Like you need integration periods, you need healing. Having fun is just as healing as doing deep internal shadow work. Like me sitting down and watching like a funny movie is just as healing as going in and asking myself those deep questions. So just make sure you don't get trapped in the toxicity of healing, because that's very real. Like I went through a year where I was doing nothing but shadow work and I was anxious and depressed, even though I thought I was healing. I was tricking myself. Like I wasn't healing. There was me just picking at things that didn't need to be picked at and not giving myself time to integrate and not having fun, because I was like, if I don't heal, then my life is going to be terrible. No, it's not. Okay. The next one is, this is the last one that I'll say. This is working with your solar plexus and your third eye. So your solar plexus chakra, if you're into energy work, is self-confidence and self-esteem and how you see yourself and how you show up in the world. Yeah. If you get so down into shadow work that you forget how to have fun, you need to stop. You need to stop and you need to take a break for a little while, because fun is shadow work. Because a lot of times people weren't able to have fun childhoods because of trauma or physical abuse, sexual abuse, like whatever those things are in your life. And so literally you having fun is healing your inner children. Like fun is just as healing as going in and doing trauma healing work. It is trauma healing work, right? Like if you had a very traumatic childhood, you sitting down and coloring for 30 minutes is just as healing as going in and doing that deep uprooting work. Just as healing. Okay? But your solar plexus, so your solar plexus is about self-confidence and self-esteem and how you show up in the world and inspired action. And so if you're wanting to work on those things, solar plexus is great. Your third eye is where you hold self-limiting beliefs. That is your perceptual lens of self and your outer reality. And so working with those two chakras is a great way to help you in those areas. You can listen to affirmations. You can, like I said, watch psychology videos. You can eat yellow colored foods or purple color foods, blue colored foods sometimes, indigo, whatever you want to say. Eat certain things for those chakras. You can listen to Reiki for your solar plexus and for your third eye. There's so many things that you can do for your chakras, but focusing on your solar plexus and your third eye will significantly help you. You seem like a lovely, cultured young lady who has seen far more than her fair share of doodles. You said, would eggs be one? Oh, I've never thought about eggs, but yeah, I would say eggs, because eggs are also like a protein source, and like protein is also like kind of linked with the solar plexus. And so like strength, like when you think protein, you think strength. And so a lot of people say like protein's for your root chakra, but it could really be for your solar plexus too, because of the strength. That's a great one. I never thought about that. That was a good example. Like bananas are a good one too. Turmeric. There's a lot of different things. But anyway, so I have to go now. But hopefully this helps some people listening to my experience and the things I have learned. If you need help with these things, let me know. Like I have one-on-one sessions that I do with people. And I do Reiki, I do Akashic record readings, soul contract reviews. I really like helping people with their self-confidence and their self-esteem and bust through self-limiting beliefs, because that's something that I have lived and breathed. Or helping you through anxiety and depression, because that is something that I have lived and breathed. Like experience is the best teacher. Okay, I'm going to put this up on YouTube, so if anybody wants to watch the replay, like maybe if you weren't here for the whole thing, it'll be up there. My YouTube is Soulharmonyhealing. Book suggestions. Yes. So Joe Dispenza's Becoming Supernatural. That book changed my life. And there's other books too, but that is how you change your reality through your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Very eye-opening. Like very, very, very eye-opening. Definitely recommend. Oh, I'm glad that you're here too, Jessica. I'm glad you're here too. And Sunflower, thank you as well. Some other announcements. I just opened my Patreon. So if you would like to join that, there's a link in my bio, and I'm going to be doing a lot of live streams in there. There'll be workshops, Reiki lives, Oracle energy readings, and then I'll be doing group coaching in there as well. I do one-on-one sessions. All of my socials are Soul Harmony Healing. I do different things on different platforms. All of the replays of the lives that I do Reiki lives. They're on my YouTube channel. Also on Friday, this Friday, is Earth Day. And so for Earth Day, I'm going to be doing a crystal and plant Reiki session to celebrate Mother Gaia. And so if you'd like to attend, it's at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday. There's a link in my TikTok bio to register so you get a reminder. I'd love to help how to contact you. Oh, you're welcome. In my bio, there's a link for my email, or you can direct message me on Soul Harmony Healing. Anybody in here, feel free to reach out. Also, if you're a light worker or an empath, oh, hey, Oriana. Hey. Also, if you're a light worker and empath and you need help with boundaries, shielding, and clearing, I have a big email with like 15 different videos in it. And it's things that have helped me and things that I have watched that helped me on my journey, and I will send them to you. If you send me a message on Soul Harmony Healing and say, hey, I would like those empath and lightworker resources, I'll send them to you. Just send me your email and then I'll send them to you. And like, they have significantly helped me. Okay. My friend Ray and I have a Facebook group. It's called Journey to Awakening with Brittany and Ray. There's a link in my bio for that. Oh, it's Soul Harmony Healing across like all my socials. Soul Harmony Healing. Patreon, YouTube, Instagram, everything. So the Facebook group is, we're building a community of people who need some like mentorship, some guidance, right? It's not an app. It's for YouTube. Oh, what I'm talking about, this is Facebook. Facebook group. So Journey to Awakening with Brittany Ray. So we just talked about all the chakras in depth, and we're pouring in resources for everyone. We're also teaching about intuition and all of the different clair psychic abilities. And so if you want to join, we would love to have you. There's a link in my bio for that. And we're going to be starting a school soon to help with people. Teaching about spirit guides and teaching about your subconscious and like all these fun things. And so there's also a way to subscribe to that email list. We're going to start opening it soon. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope you have a very blessed day. What is today? Wednesday. I hope everybody has a blessed Wednesday, and I will see some of you later. Oh, Patreon is an app. If you were asking about Patreon, I apologize about that. Patreon is an app. So Patreon is, you pay like a monthly subscription to get Patreon like specific content. So like things that you would only see like through that app. So like with me, I'll be doing like live Reiki streams and Oracle energy readings and group coaching on there that is specific for that community of people. It's also a way to like interact with people on a more like smaller group scale. Like when I'm doing group coaching here, there's so many people coming in and out of the comments. But like on Patreon, I can have more, you know, like one-on-one interaction with people and answer your questions because it's not so much information coming in at one time through the comments, and talk more directly. Okay, well, everybody have a wonderful day, and I'll see some of you later. Bye.